The one thing that is a constant in this universe is change. Change is, in fact, inevitable. Now, here's the thing though. As you experience your life, your experience change mostly in two ways. Either you're in the enjoyment of something and you rather it not change, but you know it still will, or like many people on the spiritual journey, you're looking to intentionally change things, right? Change your life, change your reality, change your universe. And that is by the way of the practices of manifestation, law of attraction, things of that nature. So what I want to do with you is I want to share with you something that I stumbled across while reading an interesting book called The Archaean Teachings. And though most of these metaphysical books, these spiritual books on manifestation or even consciousness, though they have fundamental truths that expand across all teachings, that's something that I find always fascinating, is that these truths extend themselves through multiple time, cultures, religions, faiths, races, genders. That's how you know it's a fundamental truth. When you start reading about different things or different systems and theories and theologies and methodologies, and you start seeing these common threads between them, that's when you know there is truth there. That's what I discovered when I started my journey of spirituality and started to study different religions. That's how I started to see, wait a minute, there is some fundamental commonalities between all of these different religions. That is where the truth is. And so as we talk now about manifestation, as we really get into consciously creating your own reality, I want to share with you something that I stumbled across that I thought was insightful. And I thought it was a approach that made the idea of manifestation, reality creation, or conscious creation way more seamless, right? And effortless, so to speak, even though, of course, you need to apply intention and focus. But I discovered that there were three forces for change, okay? Three forces of change when it comes to transformation. So transformation, ultimately, we're talking about manifestation, right? Where we take one thing and essentially turn it into another, right? We're talking about like alchemy. We're talking about, the ability to change one mindset, one emotion, right? One belief system into another. Recognizing that wherever we are currently, it's not really serving us. And so we need to think beyond it, go beyond it in order to align with who we know we truly are and what we should be experiencing. Okay. So these essential forces is really what's required when it comes to transformation, when it comes to ultimately manifestation. Okay. Because manifestation, let's keep it real. Manifestation is about transformation. It is about taking what currently is or what you're currently experiencing and basically turning it into something else, a new experience, a different experience, a desired experience. Okay. So let's get into it. So the first force is attention. Okay. Now, attention really means, right, being aware, awareness. Okay. Now, attention can be looked at in different ways, but we want to keep it as simple as possible. Okay. We want to keep it as direct as possible. So attention is about fixing the form. Okay. Remember, we're talking about transformation. So we're talking about taking something that is and turning it into something else. Okay. Now, when we say fixing, it doesn't mean that the current form is wrong, so to speak. It's just simply not desired. So when we say fixing, we're talking about focusing on the form, okay? On the form that currently is, but more importantly, on the form that you truly desire, okay? It's really saying what you focus on establishes itself in your reality. So, fixating means putting your mind, your intention toward that thing that you desire. Now, it starts with the awareness, right, of what you don't desire. When we talk about manifestation, we often talk about focus on what you desire or focus on what you want, not what you don't want. Many people get into, well, I don't want this. I don't want that. I don't want this. Something that I thought was fascinating back in the day when I used to be in the dating scene and I would go into dating apps, when you would go to somebody's profile and these women would have in their profile, I don't want a man that does this. I don't want a man that does this. I don't want drama. I don't want this. I don't want that. And I'm just like, okay, so what do you want? Like, what? Tell me about you, you know? And so that is what the universe is asking you as well. The universe is asking you, what is it that you want? So you must fixate on the form, right? The form that you desire. Okay. And when you fixate on it, okay, you fixate on it by way of getting clear, asking yourself the questions, right? Really diving deep. And, you know, with experience, comes the ability to go deeper and deeper into the form of which you desire, you know? Uh, and it may not be older in the sense of age, but in a sense of experience and wisdom. Okay. Number two, I'm already skipping to number three. So number two is one of my favorite topics is emotion. Emotion is essentially fuel, right? And what we're talking here is desire. Okay. After you got clarity, all right? Attention, fixation on the form that you desire. This is more of a mental aspect. Okay. Number one is about fixating your mind on that which you desire. Then the emotion is actually the fuel. Okay. The thing that gets you going toward doing certain things, making things happen. So emotion is about fixing the form. Okay. I'm sorry. Attention is about fixing the form. Emotion is about charging. Okay. Your emotion, E is energy, energy in motion. Okay. Even when you feel the desire to have something, to experience something, you feel it inside of you. There's a lot of movement happening, there's a lot of energy happening. So, what you are emotionally amplifying becomes essentially magnetized, right? So, this fixation on the form now with the emotions, right? The desire of actually having that, now that you got a clarity as to what you want, what you desire, now you put in the emotions of it, the emotional energetic charge charges up the form. It magnetizes you really to attract that form to you, to bring it to you, to bring it to life. It gives it life, you see? And now we're going to get into number three. Now, when it comes to this, a lot of people may have some kind of like issue because the word has been used and changed around. But ultimately, number three, the third force is will. Okay. Will represents direction. Will is about really being determined, being committed, being focused, being diligent, being tenacious, right? Resilient. It can look like you're fighting. It can look like you're aggressive. It doesn't have to be those kinds of energy because those kind of energy kind of brings some negativity. And we all know negativity doesn't really allow for sustainability, right? So ultimately, though, okay, it's about directing the form, okay? And directing the form, you basically, this is when what you decide becomes law. This becomes who you are. This becomes your walk in life. This becomes your reality. This becomes your path. You see, when we walk on a path, that path is going a particular direction. Now, with will, okay, you are intentionally and you have designed the path, right? Because again, starting from force one, you fixated on the form. You fix it, you fix the form. Okay. Meaning you have a clarity as to what it is that you are looking to experience. Then you attach emotions to it to charge that form, to magnetize yourself and that to one another. So that way you are pulled towards one another. And that the will is essentially you walking the walk, you being that person, you not letting anything else. I often think about a path, and it's fascinating because when people are walking on the path, you have all this stuff here, right? All these other things here that you could be doing, you can be walking. You're saying no to most of essentially all that is, right? And you are intentionally putting all of that aside and saying to yourself, this is what I want. I am willing this as my reality, as my truth. That is what we talk about when we say will. Now, one thing I want to elaborate more on when it comes to charging the form is remember that emotions have a charge to them. Okay. You have your negative emotions, you have your positive emotions. The negative emotions are going to charge that form in a different way than the positive emotions. I like to say that negative emotions pull away from the charge. That's why they're negative. Okay. They subtract. They subtract. Whereas the positive emotions, right? They add in addition to, right? So this is what you want. The positive emotions are gratitude, right? Excitement, joy, happiness, tranquility, peace. Those are the positive emotions you wish to use, in fact, must use in order to productively charge the form, charge the desire, charge your fuel toward pursuing that desire. But if you are caught up in, say, impatience, anxiety, stress, worry, concern, then that is going to take you further away, right? That is going to decrease the charge of that form. So you have to be mindful. Now, listen, we're having a human experience, so we're going to experience all the gambit of emotions. This is not for you to say, oh my God, I messed up. I felt sad today. Therefore, it's pulling me all the way back to the beginning. Don't beat yourself up for having emotions, right? For experiencing these things. What I'm saying is direct your mind, direct your energy, your spirit toward having more of the positive emotions than the negative. That's it. That means you're still moving forward. If I take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, guess what? You are still moving. Okay. You are still progressing on your path. So be clear about that. Okay. The framework essentially aligns identity. Okay. Which is what we're talking about. This here applies to your life, applies to a particular goal for today. It applies to even you, the transformation of oneself. So when we think about your identity, right? Because we know that identity is the true secret behind creating anything. You have to identify with the person. Okay. But the identity lends itself to the emotions you're going to have. Okay. And then that aligns you with a particular frequency, right? Which then creates the reality that you want. Now, initially, this is supposed to be a straight line: identity, emotions, frequency, reality. But it actually can be a loop. You see, it can just continue to keep going. That's essentially how your life is going right now. You have an identity, it creates an emotional state, aligns you with a frequency of the current reality that you have. And if you continue to identify with that same person, self, then it will continue to loop around. But ultimately, here with identity is where you have the opportunity to change the loop. Okay. Identity is everything. If you change your identity, you change the emotions, the frequency, and then your reality. So it's important that you really fixate on form. Okay. You desire, you charge that form as you allow yourself to experience a sense of desire for things. Because sometimes people in the spiritual journey, they kind of practice the absence of excitement, of pursuit, of wanting things, right? Because they are looking to be um, not attached. Okay. And that's important. That's an aspect of it. But desire is essentially saying this is the experience that we are choosing to have. If you cling to it, that can definitely be something that will lend itself to negative, right, emotions. That's why we have to be mindful about the progression and the process of your journey. If you're having a certain mindset that links itself to or attaches itself to negativity, then you know, okay, then I have to change something. I have to change how I am viewing this, how I'm identifying with this, how I'm being with this. So you have to think about that. Your emotions will tell you, okay? I tell people this all the time. Your emotions, they give you something, right? You can use your emotions productively, which in this case, you're using it to direct, but also emotions are telling you if you are aligned or not, if it's working or not. Whatever you're doing, is it working? If it isn't working, you'll be experiencing those negative emotions. If it is working, then you'll be experiencing the positive emotions. Okay. And then the positive emotions, as we established, will charge the form, that which you desire. Your will, right, will direct the form. Okay. And when we say direct the form, we're actually really talking about direct the identity, okay, of you being the person, being that person who has the thing. This is what I get into with the future self frequency. The importance of identity is imperative. You have to recognize the importance of identity. You get to change your identity. That doesn't mean you change the core root of who you are. That doesn't mean you be somebody who is, say, fake or isn't authentic. In actuality, it means when you recognize you get to change your identity, it actually means you get to be your most authentic self. It means you get to be your true version of you. Because evidently, if you're looking to transform something, that means that something in your life, that thing, is not in alignment with who you are. This is why you may not feel happiness. You may not feel joy, right? And so the identity you're currently living is not aligned with your truth. That's why you still seek to transform your life, your relationship, your finances, your health. So recognize that the path of truly being your true self is by changing your current self, changing your identity. Okay. So if you really want to sum up and make it very quickly as far as understanding how to materialize and manifest things, this is it. These are the 3 steps. Okay. These are the 3 things you need to do to change and create the life that you desire. Simple. Now, I'm a firm believer in the importance of repetition. Okay. Immersion, constantly listening, saying, doing over and over and over. That's how we program our subconscious mind. And essentially, that's what I do. This is why I put up videos almost every day, to help you to constantly be thinking and constantly be rearranging and rewiring your mind and directing your way, right? The thing that you desire. So this kind of is similar to many things that I've already said before, but what's important, and I don't think people get, is when you are teaching, when you are learning, it's important to gain different perspectives or explanations of essentially achieving, right, the same goal, right? It's important to recognize that there are infinite paths to the same destination. And so every time that I share with you, I'm looking to share with you in a different way, because I may say something one way that doesn't resonate with you, but I may break down the same exact concept in a different way that may hit, you see? So it's important to think about that, so you may be saying, oh, he's saying the same thing he said before in the other video or this video and that video. Well, this is my specialty, right? The Future Self Frequency is my book, right? That's what I'm doing. And so, but what I want you to understand is that there are different ways to look at this and approach really aligning with your future self, really aligning with the version of you that has it all. So please take a screenshot of this and recognize the simplicity of it all, right? It's not complicated. It's actually very poetic and direct. And so this is why I really wanted to share this with you, because as I study more and more, I'm always fascinated with, I try to look for more in-depth information that maybe I haven't thought of or felt or seen before, but I've gone so deep that I realize it's really just a matter of how how the person explains it. It's really a matter of how a person interprets their experience of the same truth that I share with you in the Future Self Frequency. So, but that all being said, change is inevitable, but now you are becoming aware that change is also within your power, and you can change and should be changing as you expand and evolve your consciousness and your truth, right? Your awakening. And so I invite you, go to futureselffrequency.com, pick up the bundle, which includes the book and the journal. Okay. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. Thank you so much. Peace and abundance always.